Today we're looking at Robert Oster's Gold Antiqua. Hi, I'm Adam. I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now Robert Oster's Gold Antiqua is kind of a yellowy brown color with a bit of greenish kind of tones to it. It looks really interesting. Now to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Levenger TrueWriter with a broad nib to take my notes for this video. Now before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is a chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is this kind of very light red. It's not really a pink, it's very light red. Move up, it goes to an orange with some yellows and greens at the top. Very nice. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And the red pushes away even more than it did with the immediately into water. We see the colors much more melded together, which is odd. But the red at the bottom does seem to stay around just a little bit more. Otherwise, we still see that very green at the top, the kind of yellow to green, and the orange in the middle. It's a very interesting, complex ink. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. I let my smear dry for 3 days before testing it. It handles the highlighter very well. It doesn't feather and spread all over the place, and the word underneath is very legible, making this, for me, a safe ink to use in a note-taking situation. Water reactivates and lifts most of this ink off the page, leaving a very light brown behind. Pen flush lifts everything the water did, however, a bit more. We start to see some of the white of the paper, and we clearly see the dots of the Rhodia dot pad through what remains. Makes me feel that pen flush is as far as you need to go cleaning your pens. Bleach, as would be expected, completely eradicates it from the page, but please don't use bleach to get this one from your pen. For the inks I've tested, I found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Robert Oster's Gold Antiqua has a viscosity of 2.01, making it a wetter ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. It took me 3 times to get that one right. For the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Robert Oster's Gold Antiqua has a dry time of 12 seconds, making this a faster drying ink. But interestingly, where the dry time and the viscosity both show up in the bell curve is roughly the same position, making it really steady in its performance. I like when I see inks do that. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and sometimes you see these samples and they look really full, and that can often be I purchased a second sample, like this one. Very nice. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at that Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Beautiful, beautiful shading. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, is this shading gorgeous. This is just so nice to look at. Just take a moment and wow the colors on the page. Alright, extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Gorgeous shading throughout all of the writing sample. Again, that was why I had to buy more than one sample. 8 seconds to dry. The medium, same story. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Shading all over. It's just gorgeous. It's like if you see a field of green, if you're in a helicopter and you see a field of green and the clouds are moving over, so you get patches of dark and patches of light and patches of in between and all of it. And it's just, wow, look at that. 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us no color variation with the extra fine, and it lied. It lied through its teeth. It didn't care what you thought. If you took that as what it should look like, you would have avoided this ink. And wow, look at it. But the word gold being in the name, I feel like people would avoid it because they think it's a yellow. It's not. Not at all. Just wow. Look at that. 8 seconds to dry with the extra fine, or 14 seconds to dry, sorry, with the medium. I got just stuck in my awe of how beautiful this is. The medium scrubby shows us tons of color variation. We get tons of color variation. I believe you could recover this if you smeared it. Robert Oster, I'm going to try not to get held up like that. The Tomoe River gives us no bleeding, no bleeding. It does give us ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. No halo. Back up. We do have some halo in the darker areas, not in the lighter areas, in the darker areas, like on the L, where it's darker, on the top of the D, where it's darker. A of Antiqua has a little bit of haloing. And shading. Beautiful shading on this paper that often destroys the shading. The extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. And yes, this paper can't hold it back. It's going to shade no matter what. And it does. Beautiful shading all the way through all of this writing. It looks classy. So it looks very old and classy as just wow. 13 seconds to dry. Medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Look at the shading all the way through this. It's gorgeous. Fox starts really light, gets dark, lightens up again. Mid-tone on the O, darker on the X. J starts light, and then the word itself is darker. Lazy shows tons of shading through just that one word. It is gorgeous. Now the scrubby for both don't show us the color variation, and they lied. Because we get color variation up here. The smear test says you're likely not going to be able to recover this. So, Rhodia paper gives no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. The shading is still there. It is not as pronounced as we saw before, but it is still absolutely there. The A starts lighter, gets darker on the right side of the A. The L to D gets lighter and then gets darker again. Nice. The extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Gorgeous shading all the way through all of this writing. Wow. 7 seconds to dry. Super manageable and gorgeous to look at. The next time when I run these samples out, I need a bottle. I need a bottle. If you have this ink and you don't like it, call me. Call me. This is beautiful. How do you not like this? 7 seconds to dry for the extra fine. The medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Look at the shading. Beautiful all the way through. 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine doesn't show us much color variation because the scrubbies have been lying to us on this day. The scrubby of the medium shows us plenty of color variation. We got tons of it. The smear test says you could likely recover it, and I want to believe it. So I look at this on TWSBI paper. The TWSBI paper gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We do get some shading, much more gradual in its shading for the 1.1. The A and N are lighter. The T gets a little bit darker. The I, Q, U, A get darker, 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 darker. Nice. It's just very gradual as it goes through. It's like looking at a shading chart where it goes from white to black and you see the shading through, and that's how it's shading there. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Beautiful shading. All the way through this. It's not as pronounced as on some other papers because this paper just tends to be a little bit more absorbent. But we do get beautiful shading all the way through all of this writing. 8 seconds to dry. The medium. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Beautiful shading all the way through, and part of it really stands out with the medium because it starts with a lighter tone than we had with the extra fine. It only took 15 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows us plenty of color variation, and we got it. The scrubby of the medium didn't show us nearly as much color variation as we got in a writing sample, but the scrubbies have been lying to us today. Smear test says you could likely recover it, and I'm going to believe it. So if you're a Moleskine user, can you use this ink? Yes. It bled through on the scrubby where I put it down stupid thick. It's got tons of spots of bleed through, didn't come anywhere near touching the next page. If you can live with these spots, you could write with this ink on this paper. It wouldn't be the end of the world. So it does have bleed spots. It does not unmanageable. It doesn't have show through. It's performing well here. Well done, Moleskine. Well done, sir. The medium. It feathers a lot. I don't think it's unmanageable. I don't think it would make it unreadable to you, but it does feather a lot. Just tiny feathers all over, and in certain areas gives it that blurry look. A looks blurry to me. The TI in Antiqua look blurry to me because of the amount of feathering. It doesn't have any spread. No halo, no sheen. It does offer shading on Moleskine paper. That's how strong the shade is with this ink. Extra fine, noticeably darker tone. No feather, except in the K, where it feathered like crazy. But other than that, the rest of the writing has no feathering. Cool. No spread, no halo, no sheen. This paper ate up the shade. There's no shading to be seen here. The ink doesn't look as interesting without the shading. On this paper, in an extra fine, it doesn't look as interesting. 5 seconds to dry. The scrubby showed us no color variation. We didn't get any color variation up here, and the smear test says you're likely not recovering this if you smear it on this paper. And that's all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Robert Oster's Gold Antiqua, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. Now, because this largely comes out mostly as a brown with some of the yellow and green undertones, I went for that instead of its just sort of yellowish tones that are there. Anyway, going to try and complement the greens and browns that I get, I chose Robert Oster's Orange Zest because plainly that ink goes with everything. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Robert Oster's Gold Antiqua? I think its shade, its color, everything about this ink is absolutely top notch. This sample was so nice, I tested it twice. When I got a second sample just to use for the fun of using this ink. This is fantastic, and having bought a second sample, I know the next time I need a bottle. This ink is truly spectacular. Thanks for watching.